A most dangerous game is Donald Trump's latest gamble. Except the chips in this game are his own ships and soldiers, and the bet is on regional stability in West Asia, the Persian Gulf region. He has ordered the US military to destroy Iran's IRGC artillery boats in the Persian Gulf if necessary, or so he tweeted. But the Pentagon announced it had received no official order of the sort. A game of bluff, perhaps. The latest US president is known for his background of gambling and brokering in the real estate market. But this time his bluff, if called, can lead to a military confrontation which will not have a happy ending, even for US allies in the Persian Gulf region. Where is the US heading and what will it mean for us with Donald Trump at its helm? Hi, I'm Leila Faramarzi and you're watching Iran Today. I have instructed the United States Navy to shoot down and destroy any and all Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea, he wrote on April 22nd. The literature is entertaining. The president ordered to shoot down the boats, just as last year he claimed America's Revolutionary Army back in the 1770s took over the airports from the British. US Defense Department officials whitewashed the transgression about downing Persian boats at a press briefing a few hours after the president's announcement. Deputy Defense Secretary David Norquist said, "What he was emphasizing is all of our ships retain the right of self-defense, and people need to be very careful in their interactions to understand the inherent right of self-defense." I asked what was the main difference between Donald Trump's administration of the White House and America and former US presidents. Mr. Ruivaron has something to say on all matters Iranian or Middle Eastern. Trump is a propagandist, a broker, etc. Given his mentality and ways, what dangers do you see for the future?
I think that Mr. Trump is one of the oddest presidents the US has ever had. Yes, an actor like Mr. Reagan has already come to power in the United States. Various people of various backgrounds have come to power there, and Mr. Trump is no exception. He has already served as a businessman, TV host and wrestler before becoming president. But the point is that presidents have always been in full harmony with advisory bodies and other organs, including the National Security Council, the State Department and the Department of Defense.
Mr. Marandi is an international affairs expert. Trump's apparently very different way of running the White House and the US. What would this mean for the US, would you say, and other countries at the receiving end of US foreign policy?
I don't think in principle US policy has had any fundamental changes. We've just heard, for example, that Biden has said that he will keep the US Embassy in Jerusalem. I think US policy especially US foreign policy, has a very strong element of continuity. However, Trump is more crude in the way in which he carries out those policies. And that makes it more evident for ordinary people the true nature of the regime in Washington. Otherwise, Obama supported extremists in Syria, he supported the Saudi war crimes in Yemen, he destroyed Libya. He is fundamentally no different from Trump, but it doesn't show that easily because Obama and the likes of Obama are much more sophisticated, sort of like European politicians. They go along with American policy, whatever that policy may be, but they are more sophisticated, they speak more about human rights, and they look much more humane than the likes of Trump.
In whitewashing its own sins, America is yet again painting Iran black. Sorry if I sound like I'm leaving out the grays, But US presidential campaign slogans and tension-mongering have been splashed in black ink all over the media since right after the JCPOA signing and the rise of the Trump administration, which was the downing of the JCPOA, the one platform that could have secured talks between the US and Iran. Mr. Ruhi Safat, once an ambassador, now has more time to lend the media to share his analyses.
Over
the past 3 years, we have witnessed tensions grow in the Persian Gulf. And in fact, since Mr. Trump took the presidency, such tensions have increased, and we have been witnessing adventurism here. Or we see extra-regional intervention in the Persian Gulf, or that maritime protocols are not implemented there. All of this has led to tensions in the Persian Gulf. In our view, increased tensions are aimed at justifying the presence of US forces in the region.
The IRGC simply accused what it called American terrorists of unprofessional behavior. It responded to US indifference to warnings from Iran by sending in 11 boats on April the 17th. This act of self-defense was faced with US warships. Iran waited them out, however, and the US ships withdrew from the path of its naval vessels. We got to talk to Mr. Parveen on Skype. Let's hear him out. He is indignant about who all should be safeguarding the Gulf at the foot of Iran.
Trump's recent threats go against international law. There are some international marine protocols. All states are obligated to act in compliance with those protocols in their territorial waters, international waters, in high seas. Our naval forces are operating in Iran's territorial waters. Naturally, when a country which is 7,000 miles away deploys its navy to threaten and provoke IRGC vessels, they would not sit idly and watch, and instead they would show force.
The US does have a right to enjoy self-defense like any other country or person. But the thing is, we are talking US naval vessels entering Persian Gulf waters. They've traveled all the way to this region to interfere even with Iranian civilian vessels. At best, they've inadvertently entered Iranian naval maneuvering waters and misinterpreted it as Iranian vessels getting threateningly close to theirs.
The US presidential election is approaching. It is planned to be held in November. Trump has shown weaknesses so far. His weak management of the coronavirus crisis or his past allegations about Iran that it would soon agree to US demands could cause him challenges in the election campaigning. He may be asked why he has failed in all his scenarios. It is not limited to Iran. North Korea and China are also involved. Therefore, Trump will be seeking to divert the public opinion away from his weaknesses and draw their attention to other issues. In a second scenario, for the same purpose of re-election, he may raise tensions, in which case a simple calculation error would cause problems in the region.
It may have started as a presidential campaign, but it is turning into a pain at a time when the world is coping with the coronavirus, a pandemic which has left some 1.21 million Americans sick and more than 26 million of them out of work as of May 5th. And now, 7 months from the next presidential election, yes, he needs a new distraction.
I think Iran has to be strong. Iran is not going to wait and see who's going to win the next US election, because the United States is not going to change its fundamental policy towards Iran or any other country or any other part of the world. And our part of the world obviously is going to face the same sort of pressure from Western powers that existed in the past. I don't see any change whatsoever unless the United States is fundamentally weakened, and I do think that is happening. So Iran and other independent countries, I think, will continue to pursue their policies, but they will adjust them based on circumstances, but they won't change their principles.
Just in April this year, the Iranian army unveiled 2 new homegrown strategic radar systems called Khalij Fars, Persian Gulf, and Moraqib, or Watchful. Khalij Fars is a long-range strategic radar system with an operational range of over 800 kilometers. It is a phased-array, three-dimensional radar system that can detect all conventional and radar-evading targets, as well as ballistic missiles. Muraqib is also a high-precision, three-dimensional advanced phased-array radar with a range of 400 kilometers. Iran has also unveiled a domestically designed and manufactured state-of-the-art missile defense system. This surface-to-air mobile missile system, Bavar 373, is designed to intercept and destroy incoming hostile targets. The system employs missiles with a maximum range of 300 kilometers. Anyway, to get back to who's the cause of the discussion, the combination of Donald Trump's words and actions tends to create paradox. He doesn't want war with Iran, but killed its battlefield hero, General Soleimani, right after New Year 2020. It's but a season past, and he promises to shoot down Iranian boats in Iranian waters now. He wants talks with Iranian leadership when in 2018 he ripped up the JCPOA. That's the Iran nuclear deal. And so he lost the opportunity for talks, as well as any control on Iran's nuclear program, what he perceives as a threat, or so one might think. Time for a short break. We'll be back in no time. Trump's USA isn't at odds only with Iran, but here we are focusing on our neck of the woods, which is geopolitically strategic to world peace. But how did the vicious campaign of Iran bashing begin? All boils down to Trump's presidential lobbying beginning in 2016. It was then that he said he'd make it difficult for Iranians to enter the U.S. Also, he declared to the pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC in March that his number one priority would be to dismantle the disastrous deal with Iran, as he put it. There's to be more on the JCPOA and ensuing sanctions, but that's to come after a quick break for a world media review. For that, I give you Shahrzad.
Hi, my name is Shahrzad Manucheri, and this is the news section of Iran Today. We'll be looking online for the latest update on Trump's threatening of Iranian forces in the Persian Gulf and its dangerous repercussions. The Guardian reports the US and Iran are still perilously close to conflict. Tensions emanating from the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against Iran and Tehran's maximum resistance response of escalating in the region and ramping up its nuclear program, triggered by the US withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in May 2018 and the reimposition of sanctions, nearly brought the two sides into full-fledged conflict 3 times in the past 11 months. The first was in the aftermath of Iran's shooting down of a US drone in June 2019. Then in September, when Iran stood accused of having attacked Saudi oil infrastructure, and again when the US killed General Soleimani in January, triggering retaliatory Iranian missile strikes in Iraq. The COVID-19 pandemic could have provided a window for a humanitarian ceasefire, but instead appears to have become an occasion for displaying a hardening of US's position against Iran. In an article by Tasnim News, we see how Iran is closely monitoring U.S. moves in the Persian Gulf, Oman Sea, as per an IRGC commander. Commander of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, IRGC, Navy Rear Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, said the country's naval forces closely watch U.S. vessels' movements in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. He said the U.S. is looking for tensions and confrontation in the region and has always sown insecurity wherever it has had a presence. Today, we have a powerful presence in the entire Persian Gulf region and the Strait of Hormuz, Rear Admiral Tangsiri stressed, adding that full security will be established in the Persian Gulf if U.S. forces leave the region. Earlier this week, leader of the Islamic Revolution Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei said the Persian Gulf belongs to the nations living there, and those are the ones responsible for ensuring its security. Al Monitor investigates a hot topic titled not the New York Gulf. US-Iran war of words heats up. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said today that the Persian Gulf belongs to Iran and not the United States, in the latest war of words between the two countries. The Americans should know that this waterway is called the Persian Gulf. It is not called the New York Gulf or the Washington Gulf, said Rouhani. They should understand the circumstances by taking into consideration both its name and the nation that has preserved it for thousands of years, and stop hatching plots against the Iranian nation, said Rouhani during his cabinet meeting. Raw Story claims Trump's hollow and angsty threat to Iran showed he must really be out of his mind. A tweet by the US President Donald Trump on April 22nd said, "I've instructed the US States Navy to shoot down and destroy any and all Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea." Trump seems to be talking the language of war while indulging in politics by other means. Like his ban on immigration, Trump is resorting to distractions to turn attention away from his incompetence in tackling the COVID-19 crisis in the United States. Meanwhile, Tehran is plainly dismissive. The spokesman for the Iranian Armed Forces, Brigadier General Abolfazl Shekarchi, said disdainfully, "Instead of bullying others today, Americans should put their efforts into saving their forces who have contracted the coronavirus." That's all for this segment. We'll see you next week.
President Trump pulled out of the JCPOA on 8 May 2018, reimposing once UN sanctions on Iran as US sanctions, which he has since fueled up. Also, it is worth a reminder, Trump conceded it would be hard to destroy a deal enshrined in a United Nations resolution, that is the JCPOA. And in August 2015, he said he would not rip up that deal, but that he would just police the contract so tough that they don't have a chance. That's us, the Iranians. 3 years later, once president, he did rip it up for all to see.
Well, Trump is a threat because he's a sort of loose cannon. He's not predictable. He's constantly making outrageous statements. Usually, he does not carry out what he says he will carry out, but at times he carries out the most outrageous policies that can be imagined, like the murder of high-ranking Iranian and Iraqi military officials who were the leaders of the war against ISIS. So it's hard to say what Trump will do or will not do. He's completely unpredictable in many cases.
A year ago in 2019, the Trump administration even designated the IRGC, a major arm of Iran's military, as a foreign terrorist organization. Iran responded in kind, of course, by blacklisting US Central Command. This would license shooting on sight forces from either side as common terrorists. Talk of keeping the peace. Where might US tension-mongering lead? What would it mean for US allies, the US's base in this region? Donald Trump entered the White House with numerous anti-Iranian campaign slogans, and to comply with his promise or threat, he has gone beyond the diplomatic norms of previous presidents, no doubt. Assassinating General Soleimani, a guest of Iraq, near an Iraqi airport was an act of international terrorism boasted by a president of the world's #1 democracy. Or is it?
The assassination of General Soleimani amounted to a clear war crime, an act of violating international law. International law rejects any resort to force in dealing with nations. But Mr. Trump resorted to force and carried out this criminal act against General Soleimani, who had been invited to Iraq in the territory of Iraq without even getting permission from Iraqi authorities. A new world war was imminent. Had our officials not shown wisdom, we might have seen a different situation.
Trump talks of making America great again, but he could be its very downfall. He is trying to push forth the world's largest economy with the most powerful army in the world in his usual trial and error way, to see what will happen, to quote the man himself.
ببینید من تصور میکنم
I think that the high price the US government has been paying in recent decades has resulted from Trump's policies. Trump fully destroyed the US, first at the international level and second at the level of allies like NATO. His attacks on President Macron of France, Germany and other nations and allies were unprecedented. Trump has dug up dirt on Saudi Arabia that has been his closest ally by saying repeatedly that he has asked the Saudi king to pay money. The US is easily blackmailing such toothless countries. The US is the biggest financial, economic and industrial power in the world. It's strange when it's still trying to exhort Saudi Arabia and Persian Gulf Arab sheikdoms. That's why Trump has also run into trouble with his immediate neighbors like Canada and Mexico. That has all added to US expenses.
Relations between Iran and the United States in the post-Trump era have become increasingly strained. With regard to the JCPOA, Iran adhered to the very letter of its law, which was to restrict Iran's nuclear program in return for sanctions to be lifted off this country. The UN nuclear watchdog testified to Iran's commitment some 15 times, but Trump abandoned it for fictitious reasons and accusations and launched a campaign of maximum pressure against Iran with the aim of bringing this country down to its knees. We are not out to character assassinate Donald Trump here. It's questionable whether in the long run any US president will do the Middle East and Iran any good, especially now that in Iran's case, relations with the US have been severed for the past 40 years. But Donald Trump in particular appears to have a poor understanding even of America's own aspiration to exceptionalism, to what it believes makes it great. The Trump administration pursues its Iran or anti-Iran policy with paranoia. Trump trembles at the thought of being portrayed as weak. He actually told aides he'd never let US sailors be filmed captured by Iran on their knees. That is referring to 10 US sailors being arrested by Iran in what the US fancied as a hostage situation during the Obama administration. The sailors had strayed too close to an Iranian naval base on Farsi Island in the Persian Gulf. They were soon released unharmed, but anything that might appear as a hostage situation involving US military personnel is Trump's worst nightmare. Donald Trump's mindset and ensuing actions haven't helped relations or US interests in the region. They are bombastically reactionary and can ensue explosive results. But it seems everyone can see that clearer than him. I got today's experts to comment on the matter.
The stronger Iran becomes, the more difficult it is for the United States to do anything about the country. And I think if Trump could have attacked Iran with success, he would have done so. But I also think that's true with previous US presidents. The United States knows that any attack on Iran would bring about the end of the US presence in this part of the world, and it would also destroy those regimes that are reliant upon the United States in this part of the world and which facilitate the US presence in this part of the world.
For a glimpse into the future, Iran's reaction to US acts should be telling. In June 2019, a $200 million US drone entered Iranian airspace at an altitude of 55,000 feet. The IRGC Air Force destroyed it with astonishing accuracy. In response to the assassination of General Soleimani and his entourage, the IRGC fired 17 missiles at the largest US base in Iraq, injuring more than 100 American troops. The US presence didn't get to display its sugarcoating for long. Wars have followed most every time a US official has laid foot in the Persian Gulf region. And now Saudi Arabia, a staunch US ally, is veering away and getting slightly closer to Iran's vision for peace in the region. So little is there to be found any justification for a US presence in the Persian Gulf waters. But what Iran's stance should be to America's reactionary comments and methods, I leave to our analysts to say.
In the face of wisdom, one can show wisdom. But when the opposite party is unwise, nobody can show wisdom. But the fact is that Iran has so far pursued a wise policy and shown patience. Iran is able to cause insecurity in the region, and the US would not be able to save itself from any regional conflict. However, Iran did not do so, and I think that the coronavirus issue would deal a blow at Mr. Trump.
It doesn't look like Trump's US can get out of the quagmire long begun and drastically thickened in recent years. Relations between Iran, for one, and the United States in the post-Trump era have only worsened. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Do watch again at the same times next week, and don't forget to leave your comments. Bye for now.